I'm David Carter, 62 years old, widower for 14, and somehow, after all these years, I found myself standing on the porch of the house my late wife and I built together, only to realize I was now a stranger at my own front door. The key didn't fit. It jammed halfway like the lock was rejecting me on purpose. I tried again, slower this time, as if patience could undo betrayal. The cold brass turned against my fingers. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. That house wasn't just wood and brick. It was her laugh echoing in the hallway, Sunday dinners under the lemon tree, the sound of the piano upstairs when she couldn't sleep, and now the door wouldn't open. Before I continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to face people who thought you'd never come back to claim what was yours. The porch light flicked on. A young woman in a blazer swung the door open. She was maybe 25, wearing a name tag with a real estate logo. Her practiced smile froze when she saw me standing there with my old key still stuck in the lock. "Hi there, can I help you?" I studied her face, trying to place her. No recognition. She wasn't family. She wasn't church, just business. "This is my house," I said evenly. She blinked. "Oh, you must be mistaken. This property is under contract. The sellers are Ruth and Marcus. I'm their agent, Ruth." "Marcus?" "Of course. My late wife's sister and her charming, opportunistic son." I felt something sharp twist inside me, the kind of pain that comes from wounds that never really healed. "I'm not mistaken," I replied. "I built this house with my wife." "I lived here for 30 years. Her smile faltered. "Well, the sellers said the previous owner passed away a long time ago. You must be family?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the brass doorknob that once welcomed us home after every Sunday service. She shifted uncomfortably, stepping halfway outside. "Sir, if you have concerns, I'd recommend contacting the sellers directly. We have an accepted offer. The inspection's next week." She said it like it was already done, like the past could be erased with a signature and a staging crew. I looked beyond her shoulder. The entryway was stripped bare. No framed wedding photo, no carved wooden cross above the door, just staged furniture and the faint chemical smell of fresh paint. They'd gutted the soul out of it. 14 years ago, after my wife passed, I left this town with nothing but a duffel bag and the weight of everyone's judgment. Her family called me the outsider. They treated my grief like an inconvenience. At the funeral, Ruth whispered, "She should have married someone with roots here." I pretended I didn't hear. Back then, I didn't have the strength to fight them. I signed whatever papers the lawyer pushed at me, trusting that time would settle things. I moved away, sent checks for property taxes every year, and tried not to think about lemon trees and empty hallways. But seeing that agent at my door jolted something awake. "Who changed the locks?" I asked. "The family did," she said carefully. "They said you'd passed away years ago." My laugh was quiet but sharp. "Well, as you can see, I'm very much alive." She took a step back. I'm just the agent. I can't get involved in family matters. If you want, I can give you Marcus's number." "I already have it," I said, though I hadn't called it in over a decade. Marcus had been a teenager when my wife died, a smooth talker, always looking for shortcuts. If Ruth was the hand that signed, Marcus was the one who whispered the ideas. The air between us turned heavy. She glanced nervously toward the driveway where a black SUV was parked, Marcus's kind of car. I didn't press further. Not yet. "I'll be in touch," I said, pulling my old key out of the lock. "Sir, the house is—" I walked away before she could finish. Let her rehearse her script for someone else. My boots hit the wooden porch steps with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, returning after a long coma. On the sidewalk, I turned and looked at the house again. The lemon tree still stood in the yard, branches reaching toward the roof like it was trying to hold on. But everything else felt staged, like a lie dressed in fresh paint. They thought I had disappeared. That time and silence had made me weak, but I had watched, quietly, patiently. Every year I signed the tax check and mailed it in. Every year my name stayed on those records. They were counting on me, never coming back. They were wrong. I slid the key into my pocket, not as a way in, but as a reminder. The lock didn't fit anymore, but I didn't need a key to reclaim what was mine. The night I left that house, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the motel armchair, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. 14 years of silence, and suddenly the lock refused me. That house wasn't just property, it was a promise. And promises, they're not meant to be flipped for a profit. I thought back to the last days of my wife's life. Her name was Angela. Soft-spoken, steady, and stubborn in the best way. The night before she passed, she held my hand and whispered, "David, promise me one thing. Never sell the house. Not to them, not to anyone." Her eyes were clear. She knew exactly what her family was capable of. I promised. They promised too. At least they pretended to. At the funeral, Ruth pressed my hands between hers, her crocodile tears catching the sunlight. "We'll keep her memory alive, David," she said. "Together." Family. Family. That word felt sweet on her tongue and sour in my gut. I remember replying softly, "That's what she wanted." Ruth smiled too quickly. "Of course. But you'll need help managing everything now. You can't do it alone," Marcus, standing beside her in his tailored black suit, nodded like a politician. "It's too much for one person." "We can help. That's how it always starts." At the time, I was numb. Angela's voice was still echoing in my head, and the world felt like it was tilting sideways. I signed every document the lawyer slid across the table, trusting they were temporary measures. Power of attorney for some estate matters, shared management for a family trust, a few signatures to keep things organized. I thought grief was the storm. I didn't realize the real storm was sitting in the pews, wearing black, pretending to pray. Weeks after the funeral, the conversation shifted. Ruth cornered me in the kitchen one evening. "David, the house is big. Empty now. It's too much for you. Maybe it's time to consider practical options." "Practical?" I repeated. She nodded eagerly. "Angela's memory will live on no matter where we are. Selling might be the smart thing to do. We could use part of the money for a scholarship fund. Or maybe build something new for the church." I stared at her. "She didn't want it sold." Ruth's smile thinned. "She said that before. But people change their minds at the end. She was emotional. You know how she got when she thought about family legacy. The audacity still burns in my chest." "She was clear," I said. "The house stays." Marcus had been listening from the hallway. He stepped in, hands in his pockets. "David, we're just trying to help. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was the first time I noticed how his tone carried more confidence than his years should have allowed. He wasn't asking, he was predicting. A month later, I found a stack of open house flyers shoved into my mailbox. Ruth claimed it was a mistake I knew better. Their greed wasn't loud. It was patient, dressed up as reason. It came through polite suggestions, church committee meetings, and family discussions I was slowly pushed out of. Every conversation ended the same way. "You can't do this alone." This is what she would have wanted. "We're family." Family. Always that word. Back then I was still broken. I didn't have the fight in me, so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I left. I told Ruth, "Handle it. Keep the house safe. Just don't sell it." She put a hand on my shoulder. "You can trust me." I believed her enough to disappear. I moved 2 states away. I sent checks for property taxes every year, keeping the house legally anchored. And they saw my silence as permission. I picked up my phone at the motel and scrolled through old emails, tax receipts, notices, newsletters from the church. My name was still on every legal record. Not Ruth's, not Marcus's, mine and Angela's. They'd built their little schemes on the assumption that I was gone for good, that grief had swallowed me whole. They underestimated what a promise can do to a man. I leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly. It wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about the promise I made to her, whispered in the dark while machines beeped steadily beside her hospital bed. Angela had known. She'd grown up with Ruth. She'd seen Marcus's ambition before it had a name. That's why she'd made me promise. The motel room smelled like stale coffee and cheap disinfectant, but in that moment, my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I wasn't the grieving widower anymore. I was a man with unfinished business. Tomorrow, I'd stop by the county records office. If they had touched that deed, I'd find out. If they'd forged anything, I'd see it. And if they hadn't yet, Then I still had time to flip the board before their deal went through. They thought my silence was surrender. It was strategy. And now the game was changing. Silence can be a powerful weapon. Mine lasted 14 years. To them, it looked like defeat. To me, it was armor. When I left town, I didn't slam the door behind me. I closed it quietly. I rented a small house 2 states away, started working at a hardware store, and lived like a man who'd buried not just his wife, but the version of himself that belonged here. But even from a distance, I never really let go. Every year, like clockwork, the property tax bill arrived in my mailbox. Same names on the header: David and Angela Carter. Not Ruth, not Marcus. I'd sit at my kitchen table, write the check, and slide it into the envelope. People pay bills to keep houses. I was paying to keep a promise alive. One evening, about 6 years after I left, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. "David," Ruth's voice came through, syrupy as ever. "How are you holding up?" I closed my eyes. "I'm fine. I was just calling to update you. We're planning some renovations. The house is starting to look old. You know how buyers are these days. They want modern kitchens, open floor plans." "Buyers?" I cut in. She cleared her throat. "I didn't mean buyers. I just meant people. Guests. Church folk." "Angela didn't want the house sold," I said quietly. "Yes, I know, David. We all remember, but time moves on. The neighborhood's changing. It's worth a lot now." There it was, that small, greedy tremor beneath her polished words. "Leave the house as it is," I told her. A pause. Then that fake, placating laugh of hers. Of course. Of course, we both knew she was lying. But I didn't argue. I let her think I'd softened. Sometimes silence lets people show their real intentions without resistance. Years rolled by like that. Sparse calls. Occasional updates about family gatherings. I stopped attending. Every interaction with them felt like walking through fog while someone rearranged the furniture behind my back. Still, I kept watch in my own way. The church newsletter arrived quarterly. I'd read it like a detective scanning coded messages. Photos of Ruth hosting events at the house. Marcus giving speeches about community revitalization. They were polishing their image using the very walls Angela and I had built. Then one evening, everything changed. I was sitting in my living room, a cup of tea cooling beside me, when I decided to search the house address online. I don't know what pushed me to do it. Maybe intuition. Maybe Angela's voice whispering in the back of my mind. The search result hit me like a hammer. For sale, stunning historic family home. Perfect for investors. There it was. Bright stage photos. The lemon tree still in the yard. But the house's interior, stripped of everything familiar. Listed under a slick LLC name. RM Heritage Group, LLC. Ruth and Marcus. My jaw tightened as I scrolled through the listing. Motivated sellers. Quick closing available. Under market value. Under market value? They weren't just selling. They were flipping it fast, like scavengers who'd finally found their moment. I called the listing number. A chirpy agent answered. "Hi, I'm calling about the house on Maple Street," I said. "Great property," she replied. "It's already under strong interest." "Are you an investor or looking to occupy?" "Occupy," I said slowly. "I used to live there." "Oh, how lovely. The current owners have really transformed the place. It's going fast, owners." I hung up before the anger bled through my voice. I stared at the screen, the staged photos, the price tag. 14 years of waiting, and they finally made their move. But here's the thing about silence. It gives you time to study people. Ruth loved appearances. Marcus loved shortcuts. Together, they were predictable. And predictable people are easy to corner, if you stay quiet long enough. I grabbed the folder where I'd kept all the tax receipts, letters, and original deed copies. The paper edges had yellowed, but the names on them hadn't changed. Mine and Angela's. Not once. The next morning I packed a small bag, just enough clothes for a week, my old watch, and that folder. No announcements, no calls. I didn't want to give them even a second to adjust their masks. When I pulled into the town's outskirts late that night, the skyline felt both foreign and familiar. New stores had replaced old diners. The church had been repainted, but the road to Maple Street was the same cracked stretch of asphalt it had always been. I parked in front of a rundown motel, checked in, and laid the folder on the bed. This wasn't a sentimental visit. This was reconnaissance. I was done watching from afar. It was time to see what they'd really done, and how far they'd gone to rewrite history. They thought the years had erased me, but the thing about silence is it echoes. And now mine was about to break. I didn't tell a soul I was coming back. No phone calls, no family updates, no Facebook posts. Just the quiet hum of my car rolling into a town that had buried me long ago. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The element of surprise belongs to the one who keeps their mouth shut. The morning after I checked into the motel, I shaved, put on an old denim jacket, and walked toward the downtown. The sun was sharp, but the air carried that faint autumn bite I remembered. The town had changed, new storefronts, cleaner sidewalks, but under the surface it was the same place where whispers spread faster than sermons. My first stop wasn't the house. It was the county records office. If Ruth and Marcus had done anything legal to that property, it would be sitting in a file drawer, waiting for someone like me to pull it out. The building smelled like paper, dust, and bureaucracy. A clerk behind the counter looked up from her computer. "Morning," she said politely. "How can I help you?" "I need to look up property records for 412 Maple Street," I replied. She typed it in, squinting at the screen. "Name on the deed?" "David Carter," I said. "And Angela Carter." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You're David Carter?" "Yes." She turned the monitor slightly toward me. "Looks like the title hasn't been transferred. You and Angela are still listed as the owners of record. Taxes are paid in full through this year. Any liens? Powers of attorney? Recorded sale?" She shook her head. "Nothing like that. But—" She clicked through another tab. "There was a request for a copy of the deed about 9 months ago. From R.M. Heritage Group, LLC. My chest tightened. "Who signed it?" She printed the document and slid it across the counter. I scanned the page. The request form bore Marcus's signature. I folded the paper carefully, sliding it into my jacket pocket. "Thank you." She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "There's also a preliminary notice of sale, not officially recorded. Looks like someone submitted a draft deed transfer, but it wasn't accepted. Missing a required signature." "Which signature?" She tapped the screen. "Yours." "Of course." They'd tried to sell without me, hoping no one at the county would look too closely. And for a while, they were probably right, until now. When I stepped back outside, the wind carried church bells from a few blocks away. Sunday service. The sound hit me harder than I expected. Angela used to hum along while watering the lemon tree. I stood there for a moment, letting the bells echo down the street like ghosts tapping on old doors. I walked toward the church. It looked cleaner, newer, but the stone steps were the same, and sitting near the entrance, just where he always sat, was Reverend Thomas, the church trustee. Angela's friend, my ally, once upon a time. His hair had gone white, but his eyes were still sharp as river stones. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "David Carter." "Well, I'll be—" I climbed the steps. "Been a long time, Reverend." He clasped my hand with surprising strength. "Too long. I thought you'd vanished for good." "I almost did," I admitted, "but it looks like I came back just in time." His smile faded. "This about the house?" "Yes." He sighed, shaking his head. "They've been busy. I've had my suspicions for years, but they never tried to loop me in officially. They know the deed requires both your signature and mine if they want to sell." Angela made sure of that. "She was always the careful one," I said quietly. "She was wise," he corrected, "and she didn't trust Ruth. I warned Marcus at last year's reunion that the church wouldn't back any sale without proper process." He smiled like a wolf and said, "We'll handle it." That was the last time I saw him. I looked out toward the street. "They've listed the house. Open houses. A fake LLC. They changed the locks. And they told people I was dead." Thomas clenched his jaw. "Dead, huh? Well, you look pretty alive to me. What's your plan? Watch. Listen. Let them show their hand before I make mine." A slow grin spread across his face. "You always did prefer strategy over shouting." "I learned from Angela," I said. We sat on the church steps for a while, watching parishioners stream out. A few older faces recognized me but kept their distance, their eyes full of polite curiosity. I wasn't ready to answer their questions yet. When I finally walked back toward Maple Street, I avoided the house itself. Not yet. I didn't want them to know I was back. The agent would have mentioned the strange man at the door. Marcus would be expecting confrontation. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Not yet. Instead, I stood across the street behind a row of hedges, watching as a white van pulled up. Stagers climbed out carrying decorative throw pillows, fake plants, and neutral art, the kind meant to erase personal history. The house looked like it was being prepped for someone else's story. My story. Angela's story. They'd gutted the life out of it, but the structure was still ours, and legally it still belonged to me. I watched them work, silent and unseen. Every fake fern they placed was another piece of evidence I'd use later. This wasn't the time for a showdown. This was reconnaissance. I took pictures. I noted license plates. I memorized faces. They had no idea I was already inside their blind spot. That night, I sat in my motel room with the Reverend's words echoing in my head. She didn't trust Ruth, neither did I. Tomorrow, I'd attend the open house. Not as David Carter, rightful owner, but as someone else, someone they wouldn't see coming. They thought they were preparing for a sale. They didn't realize I was preparing for a reckoning. Sunday afternoon, I walked up to my own house like a stranger. A shiny open house sign leaned against the mailbox, pointing toward the front porch with cheerful red arrows. Balloons bobbed in the breeze. It felt obscene. I'd swapped my denim jacket for a pressed shirt and dark slacks. A baseball cap shaded my face. It wasn't a perfect disguise, but it was enough to make me look like any other curious buyer drifting through on a weekend. The young real estate agent spotted me immediately. Her smile flicked on like a switch. "Welcome. Come on in." I nodded, stepping through the doorway I used to open with my own key. The scent hit me first. Synthetic vanilla candles, fresh paint, and the sterile tang of bleach. They'd wiped away the house's soul and replaced it with generic charm. "Feel free to look around," she said brightly. "The sellers are very motivated." We've had strong interest already. I wandered through slowly, my eyes tracing every wall, every corner. The living room had been staged with neutral beige couches and bland, abstract art. But I knew what used to hang there, Angela's quilt, framed like a tapestry, and the piano that sat against the far wall. I touched the mantel. Once, our wedding photo sat there. Now it was a vase of fake eucalyptus branches. Two women whispered near the kitchen. "Isn't it beautiful?" one said. "Gorgeous. And such a good price," the other replied. "They must be eager to offload it." Eager to offload my house. My jaw tightened. As I moved into the kitchen, the agent followed. "The owners are a family trust," she explained smoothly. "They've agreed to sell below market to speed up the process." "It's a great opportunity. A family trust?" I repeated. "Yes. Ruth and Marcus. Lovely people. Very generous. They're just ready for a new chapter." "Generous," I almost laughed. I leaned against the island. "And the original owner?" She tilted her head. "Oh, he passed away years ago. It was a complicated estate, but everything's settled now." I looked straight into her eyes. "Everything's settled, huh?" She faltered just for a second. "Well, yes." Of course I let the silence hang until she shifted uncomfortably. Then I smiled faintly and continued my tour. The dining room had been stripped of Angela's china cabinet. The lemon-patterned curtains were gone, replaced with plain white blinds. Every personal trace had been erased. Upstairs I found more evidence. The attic door was open, a folding ladder extended. A man in a contractor's shirt was hauling boxes down. I approached quietly. "What's all this?" I asked casually. He wiped his forehead. "Old junk. The family asked me to clear it out. Staging looks better without clutter." I glanced inside one of the open boxes. My breath caught. It was full of church hymnals, handwritten by Angela. She'd been the choir director for 20 years. Each book had notes scribbled in her neat handwriting. These weren't clutter. They were history. I picked one up, flipping through the pages. My chest tightened at the sight of a note in the margin. "For David. Always." "Sir," the contractor said, "please don't touch the items. The family wants them stored." "Stored where?" He shrugged. "Somewhere off-site." "I just do what they pay me to do." I set the hymnal back carefully. "Right. As I descended the ladder, I felt a heat in my chest. Not rage exactly, something colder, more focused. They weren't just selling a house, they were erasing a legacy to make room for profit. Downstairs, a familiar voice made me freeze. Marcus, I'm telling you, we need to close fast before anyone asks questions. I stepped into the hallway and saw him, Marcus, standing near the back door in a crisp suit, speaking into his phone. His hair was slicked back, his confidence the same as ever. He didn't see me. No, she doesn't know, he said. He's gone. I told them he passed years ago. Once the sale clears, we'll dissolve the LLC, split the money, and that's that. My fingers curled into a fist. He's gone. That was me. A ghost they'd buried on paper. When he hung up, the agent approached him nervously. One of the visitors was asking a lot of questions about ownership. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Who? She gestured vaguely toward the rooms. Older man? Ball cap, pressed shirt. He scanned the area but didn't catch me. I stayed behind a doorway, just out of sight. Get names, he ordered. We don't need nosy types complicating things. Yes, Marcus. I slipped quietly out the front door before he could spot me. Standing on the porch, I took a slow breath. My heartbeat was steady. This wasn't the time to confront him. Not yet. Instead, I walked to my car, opened the glove compartment, and pulled out my phone. I'd recorded everything, the agent's lies, the contractor's comments, Marcus's voice admitting he'd declared me dead. Evidence. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Through the window, I saw Marcus standing at the doorway, scanning the crowd like a predator, sensing a shift in the wind. Good. Let him feel that chill. They'd spent years constructing their little illusion, staging lies, fake LLCS. But illusions crumble fastest when the truth starts moving in silence. That night, I sat in the motel room going through the recording, labeling each clip carefully. Every sentence mattered. Ruth and Marcus weren't just greedy, they were reckless. They'd shown their hand, and I was just getting started. I met Thomas again on Monday morning, in his office behind the church, the room that always smelled like hymnals and lemon oil. Sunlight fell across his desk in clean squares, lighting up stacks of binders labeled with years. He motioned me in, shut the door, and slid a worn leather ledger toward me. This, he said, tapping the cover, is why Ruth never invited me to a single meeting about the house. Angela wrote a clause with our attorney before she passed. It never got rescinded. I opened the ledger. The first page was neat and careful. Angela's handwriting. My chest tightened at the loops of her letters. Under the heading House Covenant, she had written, Use for family and faith. No sale without written consent of spouse and trustee. Below that, in the lawyer's block print, was the addendum number, the date, and the notary's seal. I traced the seal with my finger. This is still valid? Thomas nodded. Filed with the church archive and included in our copy of the deed package. The county's official bundle should mirror it, even if folks pretend they don't see it. It means any transfer requires you and me to sign, together, and they never came to you. They came close, he said. Marcus sent an email last year asking me to review the optics of a sale. Not the legality, the optics. He wanted a photo of me shaking his hand at a ribbon cutting. I replied with the language of the covenant. He did not reply. I glanced up. Do you still have the email? Thomas was already pulling a folder from a drawer. Printed and time-stamped. I also have board minutes from the month Angela added the clause. There's a line noting her intent to welcome church retreats and choir evenings here. She wanted songs in those walls long after she was gone. I swallowed hard. They'd been hauling her hymnals to a storage unit. Then we'll pull them back, he said calmly. But first, you need cover. Something to slow them down. We already have it, I said, tapping the covenant. This freezes their deal. It should, Thomas said. But Marcus moves fast, and people get sloppy when the money smells fresh. We need a paper wall they can't run through. He stood, crossed to a cabinet, and returned with a thin blue binder. I prepared a church trustee affidavit, anticipating foolishness. It states the covenant, the approval requirement, and my refusal to consent to any sale or transfer, pending clarification. You'll sign acknowledging receipt. I'll notarize my part. Then we lodge copies with the county clerk. I let out a long breath. You've been waiting for me. "I've been waiting for the truth to knock," he said. It finally did. We worked in quiet rhythm. He filled blanks with steady handwriting. I reviewed dates and addendum numbers, cross-checking against Angela's ledger lines. He made 2 certified copies and a 3rd plain copy for my folder. Each page felt like a brick in a wall, rising between my house and their hands. When he finished notarizing, he slid a smaller envelope across the desk. There's more. The finance log. Our treasurer flagged a series of community improvement donations last spring from RM Heritage Group, LLC. The money hit event budgets that Ruth controlled, but there's no receipt trail for several withdrawals. It looks like they were greasing goodwill while setting the table to flip. "Buying applause," I said. "Renting it," he corrected. "Applause disappears when the music stops." I skimmed the log. The entries were tidy, the gaps were loud. "This tells a story," I said. "Not just a sale." "A performance." "Exactly why we won't shout," Thomas said. "We'll tune the room instead." Next Sunday is homecoming. Everyone will be here. Family, choir, elders, the kids who grew up singing under your roof. We'll gather the voices that house raised and let the truth speak where the lies were staged. I thought of the balloons on my mailbox, the fake eucalyptus, the contractor boxing hymns. You want a public reveal? I want the community to hear Angela's words in Angela's house, and to hear them from the 2 people she trusted to guard it. He slid the ledger closer to me again. "This is her voice, David. Yours is the echo that keeps it alive." I closed the book gently. "Then let's do more than talk." We left the office and walked 2 blocks to the county complex, where the clerk recognized me from Friday. Thomas introduced himself formally, presented his trustee credentials, and placed the affidavit on the counter with the same gravity a judge uses for a gavel. The clerk read, glanced at the notary seal, and nodded. "I'll scan and attach this to the parcel record," she said. "It will show on any title search. And if a deed crosses my desk without these signatures, it's going straight back." "Please add this too," Thomas said, offering the covenant copy. "We want the file to sing the same tune from every page." The clerk smiled. "Consider it in harmony." Outside, the wind carried the smell of cut grass. I felt lighter than I had in years, not because the fight was over, but because it had started on solid ground. Thomas handed me a fresh manila folder containing stamped copies. I tucked it under my arm like a shield. "What about Marcus?" I asked. "He'll feel the resistance by tomorrow morning," Thomas said. "His title company will call him confused. He'll call Ruth. Ruth will call anyone who listens. Let them spin. When the room is loud, the truth rings clearer." I pictured Marcus on his phone, pacing, charming, pressing. I pictured Ruth rearranging words like furniture, trying to make them fit. Let them. After lunch, Thomas and I drove to the house, keeping to the opposite curb. The open house signs were gone for the day, but the staging van was back. 2 men carried out another box, this one labeled sheet music. I snapped a picture of the label, the plate number, the driver's face. "Proof," I said. "And return addresses," Thomas murmured. "We'll retrieve what belongs." A curtain moved upstairs. For a second I thought I saw Ruth's silhouette, thin as a blade. Then it was gone. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I didn't. Either way, the house did something it hadn't done for me since I returned. It relaxed its shoulders. Not enough to smile. Just enough to breathe. We headed back to the church to plan. Thomas spread a calendar on the table. Homecoming order. Welcome hymn. Youth choir. Brief announcements, then testimonies. That's our window. "Announcements," I said. "You'll take the mic." "I will," he said. "But this is your house and your promise. When I finish, you step forward with the covenant. Calm, clear, and documented. No anger. No showboating. Just daylight. And if they try to talk over it," he almost grinned, "we sing. Nothing stills a room faster than a hymn everyone knows, especially if the choir starts it." I felt Angela beside me then, not as a ghost, but as a melody I could hum without thinking. She'd taught me how to hold a note. She'd taught me how to hold my ground. "What do you need from me before Sunday?" I asked. 3 things, he said, counting on his fingers. "First, print your complete tax receipt set. We'll bind it in order. Years of proof you never let go. Second, write a short statement of intent. 2 paragraphs. Why the house stands, who it stands for. Third, rest. Men who haven't rested mistake volume for strength? I nodded. And you? I'll brief the board, quietly. No leaks. I'll call the treasurer to have those donation gaps summarized. And I'll ask Mrs. Green to pull the youth choir's favorite hymn. The one Angela arranged. People will hear the arrangement and remember who sewed it into them. We stood. He clasped my shoulder. You kept your promise, even in silence. Now we keep it in song. Back at the motel, I laid everything on the bed. Covenant copy, trustee affidavit, email printouts, finance gaps, deed synopsis, my old tax receipts in a careful stack. I bound them with a black clip and slid the package into a simple gray folder. Nothing flashy, just facts. On top, I placed a single page I'd typed and retyped until the words felt right. 2 paragraphs. Why the house stands, who it stands for. Before turning out the light, I drove to a copy shop and made 10 sets. 1 for the clerk, 1 for the church, 1 for the title company whose name was on the listing, 1 for the agent, 1 for Marcus, 1 for Ruth, 1 for the choir director, 1 for me, 2 for whoever tried to pretend they didn't hear. When I got back, a text pinged my phone from an unknown number. Inspection moved up to Wednesday. Access arranged. M. He thought he owned the calendar. I smiled at the folder on the bed. Fine. Let him move up his inspection. I'd just moved up the reckoning. Sunday came dressed in crisp autumn air and the smell of baked pies from the church kitchen. The parking lot overflowed with cars, laughter, and the kind of rehearsed politeness families wear like Sunday hats. Homecoming was always the biggest event of the year. Angela used to run it like a maestro. Every hymn and potluck dish timed to perfection. This year, her house was the unspoken centerpiece, and the trap I'd set was ready to spring. I arrived early wearing a charcoal jacket and holding the gray folder under my arm. Thomas stood by the church doors greeting guests, his trustee pin gleaming on his lapel. When he saw me, he gave a small nod. Steady, deliberate. Inside, the sanctuary buzzed with voices. Choir members rehearsed Angela's arrangement, the one she'd written by hand years ago. Hearing it again was like feeling her hand on my shoulder. A bittersweet calm settled over me. Marcus showed up late, of course, making an entrance. A tailored suit, shiny shoes, and that grin that always tried to sell more than it owned. Ruth followed, draped in pearls, hugging people she'd ignored all year. She kissed cheeks, whispered blessings, and accepted compliments on everything she's done for the community. I watched them from the back pew, unseen. They hadn't spotted me yet. Morning, Marcus, a deacon said. Heard the sales moving along fast. Congratulations, Marcus's smile sharpened. God provides, he replied smoothly. We're just doing what's best for everyone. I bit back a laugh. God provides? No, greed schemed. Service began with the youth choir. As the opening hymn filled the room, people swayed gently, hands rising. Thomas stepped to the pulpit for announcements. His voice carried steady authority. As most of you know, he began, this homecoming is not just about reunion. It's about honoring the legacy that built this congregation. And today we revisit a promise made many years ago by someone whose spirit still lives in these walls. I saw Ruth shift in her seat. Marcus leaned forward, alert. Thomas continued, after the youth choir, we'll have testimonies. But before that, a brief word regarding a matter close to our hearts and our history. He gestured toward the choir. They began Angela's hymn. The first notes rolled through the sanctuary like sunlight through stained glass. Every elder knew it. Every child had grown up hearing it. And as the voices rose, the room quieted into something deeper than sound, memory. Ruth's smile faltered. Marcus stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. When the song ended, Thomas returned to the microphone. For those who don't know, that arrangement was written by Angela Carter. And the house at 412 Maple Street, the house where that song was born, was protected by a covenant she placed in trust. Today we reaffirm that covenant murmurs spread through the pews. Heads turned. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Thomas looked toward the back. David? I rose slowly, the gray folder in my hand. For a heartbeat, Ruth's face went pale. Marcus's head snapped toward me like a cornered animal catching scent of the hunter. I walked down the aisle. No rush. Each step felt like a drumbeat. By the time I reached the front, the room had fallen silent. I faced the congregation, not Ruth or Marcus. Most of you knew Angela, I began. She loved this church. She loved this town. And she loved that house, not for its bricks, but for what it held. She asked me to protect it. I promised I would. I opened the folder and held up the covenant copy. Angela wrote a legal clause with the trustee. No sale can happen without my signature and his. It was filed with the county. It's in every title record. That house was never theirs to sell. Gasps rippled across the pews. Thomas stepped beside me, holding his trustee affidavit. The church stands with that covenant, he said firmly. Marcus shot to his feet. This is a family matter, he barked. You don't get to grandstand here. This is a house built on church land and family faith, Thomas interrupted calmly. And the church will not let lies stand where hymns were written. Ruth stood too, trying to salvage control. David, this isn't fair. You left? We took care of everything. You can't just show up and... I looked at her, my voice quiet but sharp. You didn't take care of it. You staged it. You listed it. You told people I was dead. You tried to sell a legacy that didn't belong to you. Whispers filled the room like wind through dry leaves. A woman from the choir whispered, They said he died. Another muttered, Lord have mercy. Marcus's composure cracked. You can't prove anything, he snapped. I pressed play on my phone. His own voice echoed through the microphone. He's gone. I told them he passed years ago. Once the sale clears, we'll dissolve the LLC, split the money, and that's that. The sanctuary went dead still. Thomas's voice carried like a bell. Lies brought into the light lose their power. Ruth's face flushed, deep red. Marcus tried to speak again, but the choir began softly humming Angela's hymn. One by one, voices joined until his protests drowned under melody. I turned to the congregation. I stayed silent for years. Maybe too long, but silence doesn't mean surrender. Today we reclaim what was promised. The hymn swelled. Even those who didn't know all the words joined on the refrain. Ruth sat down slowly. Marcus lowered his head, eyes burning but speechless. I didn't need to shout. The house had spoken through every voice that once filled it. And in that moment, the trap snapped shut. Not with violence, but with truth. As Thomas and I stepped back from the pulpit, I caught Marcus's gaze. His smile was gone. His confidence cracked. He knew the tide had turned. This wasn't just a church service anymore. It was the beginning of their unraveling. The hymn faded like a tide going out, leaving the shoreline, every stone, every shell, every truth exposed. I held the gray folder to my chest, and when the last chord settled, I stepped forward again. Thank you, I said to the choir. Angela would have smiled at that. Ruth rose immediately. David, we can discuss this privately. There's no need to. There's every need, I said, steady. This sale was built on lies told in public. The truth belongs in public, too. Thomas set the trustee affidavit on the pulpit. For the record, the church recognizes the covenant. No transaction of 412 Maple can occur without both our signatures. A man in the fourth pew called out, So the listing's invalid? It was always invalid, I replied, and anyone who pushed it forward joined a fraud. Marcus forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Let's not use ugly words. There was confusion, paperwork from years ago, bad communication. Confusion doesn't declare a living man dead, I said. The agent near the aisle went pale. I didn't know. You do now, I said. Pull the listing today. I will, she whispered. I'll call the broker right after service. Marcus scoffed. You're not canceling anything. We have an inspection Wednesday. Not anymore, Thomas said. An affidavit blocking consent is filed with the parcel record. Anyone proceeding after seeing it will answer to the clerk, the state, and, if necessary, the district attorney. Ruth's voice thinned. This is extreme. Think of the family. I said. I'm thinking of the woman whose name is on the covenant, and of every child who learned a hymn under that roof. A boy in the youth choir raised his hand. Is it true they moved the songs out of the house? Boxes of hymnals were taken, I said. They'll be returned. The room turned, bit by bit, away from Ruth and toward us. That was the shift I'd waited for. Not just papers and seals, but hearts and minds slipping free of a story that never fit. Marcus pitched his voice for charm. Folks, listen. Investments keep our town alive. We were going to donate a portion of the proceeds. From money you had no right to touch, Thomas said. I held up the finance log. RM Heritage Group gave community gifts that passed through event accounts Ruth controlled. The gaps in the receipts are loud. Ruth flushed. I resent the implication. It's not an implication, I said. It's arithmetic. A deacon asked, if the house isn't theirs to sell and funds were used to push a sale, what happens next? Simple, I said. The listing is withdrawn. The title company gets the covenant and affidavit. The church and I restore anything removed, and the family decides whether to cooperate or let lawyers measure their decisions. Marcus bristled. You're threatening us. I'm reminding you the law still works. He stepped closer. You abandoned that house. I paid every tax bill for 14 years, I answered, lifting the receipts. Silence is not surrender. An elder moved to the aisle mic. Ruth, why did you tell us David had passed? Ruth's mouth opened, closed. That's what I was told. By whom? The elder asked. She hesitated. By people with Marcus's voice, I said. He snapped. Enough! It is enough, Thomas said. This is not a court, and we won't turn worship into a quarrel. Notices have already been sent. The broker will receive a formal cease and desist by day's end. The agent nodded. I'll expedite it. I lifted the final page, my statement of intent. The house stands as a place of family and faith, not speculation. It will host songs again. The lemon tree will shade dinners again. We are not evicting memory to make room for profit. A breath moved the room, not cheers, a settling. Marcus tried one last angle. If you keep it, the maintenance will ruin you. Roof, plumbing, code upgrades. I've arranged contractors, I said, and Angela started a repair fund. Quietly, it grew while no one looked. Ruth sank into the pew. You planned this. I prepared, I said. There's a difference. The choir director touched the piano. One soft chord gathered us. While the room sang the refrain, the agent slipped to the vestibule, phone to her ear. Marcus stood frozen, counting exits that kept disappearing. Ruth twisted a handkerchief, white on white. When the hymn ended, I turned to Thomas. It's time. We walked into noonlight. The agent hurried toward us, breathless. The broker has pulled the listing. It's offline. Good, I said. Send the withdrawal confirmation to the title company and to this address. I handed her a new P.O. box card. She nodded. I'm sorry. I truly didn't know. Then help make it right. 2 officers waited on the steps, small town calm, hats in hand. One nodded to Thomas. We received your packet. The complaint is logged. We'll be speaking with parties about the declaration of death. Marcus stopped cold. You called the police? I called the record, Thomas said. It answers to more than one office. No cuffs, no spectacle, just statements. The officer took mine, then Thomas's, then the agent's brief account, paper and ink tracing where the lie had walked. When they left, the bell struck noon. Faces watched through the glass, curious, cautious, awake. Thomas touched my elbow. Ready to go home? Home, I repeated. The word felt right again. We crossed the street. The lemon tree rustled as if it had been waiting for the wind. At the porch, I didn't reach for the old key. I slid an envelope under the mat, the first return notice, addressed to Ruth and Marcus, listing what must be restored within 7 days. Hymnals, photos, the quilt. I straightened, feeling the boards settle under my boots. They tried to sell a promise, I said, and learned a promise isn't theirs to sell, Thomas answered. I looked at the door that had refused me. Not anymore, I said. Not ever again. Then calmly I raised my hand to the locksmith, waiting at the curb. The locksmith finished before sunset. New pins, new plates, new keys. 2 for me, 1 for Thomas, 1 sealed for the church archive. When the last screw tightened, the house exhaled. Even the lemon tree seemed to lean closer, as if listening. Welcome back, Thomas said, handing me the small brass key. I turned at once. The lock yielded like a stubborn memory, finally telling the truth. Feels right. Now comes paperwork and patience, he said. Karma likes a good calendar. We started by rolling back the staging. The agent, trying to make things right, sent 2 workers to remove rented furniture and return whatever they could identify as ours. I walked room to room with a clipboard. "The piano returns," I said. "Already scheduled," she answered. "The quilt goes back on that wall." "Yes, sir." "Hymnals?" "Warehouse on Pine." "I'll have them delivered by nightfall." The house was bare-boned but honest. The fake eucalyptus was gone. Sunlight touched the mantel without pretending. Thomas stood at the window, reading the affidavit copy like a benediction. "Tomorrow," he said, "we visit the title office. Then we send formal notices to the buyer's attorney, the broker, and RM Heritage Group." "Notices first thing," I said. No shadows left. Morning brought consequences. The broker emailed confirmation that the listing was withdrawn. The title company replied with a cautious note. Affidavit received. Title clouded by covenant. File suspended pending owner and trustee consent. That single sentence felt like a door closing on a thief's hand. At 10, the police called. "Mr. Carter, we're following up on the declaration of death statement." I kept my voice even. "You have the recording?" "We do," the officer said. "We'll be interviewing Miss Ruth Naylor and Mr. Marcus Naylor today. Civil matters will proceed through counsel. Criminal implications, if any, depend on intent and filings. Understood." After the call, Thomas looked at me over his glasses. "They'll say it was confusion." "They rehearsed confusion," I said. "They forgot to rehearse the county clerk." We took the covenant packet to the title office in person. A manager met us in a glass room that smelled faintly of toner. She flipped through pages, slowing at the notary seals. "I won't lie," she said. "I've seen families try to outrun restraints." "This one's elegant. It sings 'It Should,'" Thomas said. "A choir director wrote it." She nodded. "We'll note the covenant on any future search and refuse recording without both signatures. If anyone tries to slide paper past us, it will come back stamped defective." "Please send written acknowledgement," I said, "and copy counsel listed here." I slid a card across, an attorney Angela had trusted for church work, now semi-retired but still precise. Back at the house, a delivery truck arrived with boxes marked HYMNS. The contractor from the open house hopped down from the cab, hat in hand. "Mr. Carter, I didn't know what we were moving. I was paid to clear the attic." "You've brought them back," I said. "That counts." He blinked. "Do you still want me for repairs?" "I'm good with roofs. Give me an estimate on the eaves and the porch posts," I said. "Fair price." "No shortcuts." "Yes, sir," he said quickly. "No shortcuts." While he measured, I set the quilt on the dining table and stretched it smooth. My hands remembered the pattern like braille. I could almost hear Angela murmuring about stitches too taut, corners too loose. When I lifted it to the wall, Thomas steadied the ladder. "Straight?" I asked. "True," he said. We were halfway through rehanging framed photos when an SUV screeched to the curb. Marcus climbed out fast, suit jacket flaring, sunglasses hiding the eyes he didn't want anyone to read. He strode up the walk like he still believed entrances could fix endings. "Open up," he called, pounding the door. "Now." I stepped into the doorway and let him hit wood instead of me. "State your purpose." "My purpose?" He laughed once, brittle. "My purpose is to stop you from making a circus out of a misunderstanding." "The broker pulled the listing," I said. "The title is frozen." "The affidavit is recorded. Which part is misunderstood?" He leaned in. "You think paper scares me? I know everyone in this town. Everyone heard you yesterday," I answered. "Paper's just the echo." Thomas appeared at my shoulder, calm as a metronome. "Marcus, any further access must be by appointment and with counsel copied. You'll receive a restoration list. 7 days." Marcus tugged off his sunglasses. His eyes were restless, but not defeated yet. "You want money?" "Is that it?" "We can negotiate not for sale," I said. "Not yesterday, not today, not ever." His smile snapped off. "You left." "We handled it." "I paid every tax bill," I said. "I handled it without applause." He looked past me into the hall, saw the quilt, the empty space where the piano would return, the lemon light pooling on the floor. He swallowed. "This isn't over," he said. "I agree," I said. "It's properly beginning." He backed off the porch, fumbling for his keys. "You'll hear from our lawyer," he tossed over his shoulder. "We just did," Thomas said dryly, and closed the door. The quiet afterward was gentle. I set my forehead against the cool wood, breathing out what felt like 14 years at once. Thomas gave me a moment, then spoke softly. He'll try other doors. And find them locked, I said, slipping the brass key into my pocket. By afternoon, the church treasurer arrived with a binder of reconciliations. She looked apologetic. I should have sounded the alarm sooner. You sounded it now, I said. That's what matters. She pointed to the gaps. The donations entered the event account, but cash withdrawals have no matching receipts. It's messy. Messy is curable, Thomas said. Fraud is prosecutable. Which is this? She asked. Depends who tells the story first, I said. Today it's numbers. Tomorrow it's intent. We made copies, then walked them to the police station. The same officer logged each page carefully. If this becomes civil litigation, he said, your documentation will save months. On the way back, we passed the church playground. 2 little girls were drawing a house in chalk. Triangle roof, square door, 1 lopsided tree. Looks like ours, I told Thomas. He smiled. They all do, if you keep them long enough. Evening softened the edges of everything. The contractor returned with estimates. Fair, detailed, signed. Start Wednesday, I said. He nodded. And the porch swing? The anchor's loose. Fix it. Someone will want to sit there. Night fell like a curtain. I opened windows and let the house breathe. I set the hymnals on the piano bench space and laid Angela's metronome beside them. It clicked once when I steadied it, a tiny wooden heartbeat. My phone buzzed. An email from the title manager. Notice sent to buyer's counsel. File on hold. Covenant indexed. Another from the broker. Listing withdrawn across partner sites. Apologies for the distress. And one more, unexpected, from the agent. If you'd like, I'll volunteer to help return any missing items. No fee. I want to set this right. I typed back, bring your checklist, tomorrow at 9. Thomas gathered his coat. You should sleep here tonight, he said. I will, I said. He paused at the door. Karma's closing costs aren't paid in spectacle, he added. They're paid in small, steady receipts. I've kept mine, I said, tapping the folder, and I'll keep the rest. When he left, I stood alone in the foyer, listening to the house relearn its own sounds. Floorboards settling, wind tracing the eaves. Somewhere outside, the lemon tree knocked lightly against the gutter, like a friend remembering the way home. I set a chair on the porch and sat with the key warm in my hand. Across the street, a few lights flicked off one by one. The town exhaled. My phone buzzed once more. A blocked number, a single text. 7 days won't be enough. I smiled into the dark. It will be exactly enough, I said to the night, to the tree, to Angela, to myself. Because in 7 days, I wasn't just keeping a house. I was keeping a promise. Morning came clear. I brewed coffee, walked the rooms with a pad in my hand and the brass key in my pocket. Sunlight squared the floorboards. The lemon tree tapped the glass like a quiet hello. At 9, the agent arrived with a clipboard. I brought the checklist, she said, in a truck. We'll make it honest, I said. Thomas joined us a few minutes later. We worked as a small crew, naming the missing pieces and calling them home. The piano returned at noon with its scar on the left leg. I placed Angela's metronome on top and set it, ticking. 1 click to bless the room, then silence like a vow that didn't need music to be true. Ruth arrived after lunch, walking carefully in flats. She stopped on the porch, eyes on the quilt, the photos, the choir books, stacked like bricks. I came to talk, she said. Talk then, I answered. I shouldn't have said you were gone. You shouldn't have tried to make me gone, I said. I wanted order. Money solves things. It rents gratitude. It doesn't keep it. I thought if the house were sold fast, there would be less pain. Pain isn't a stain you can scrub off a deed, I said. It's a teacher. She looked around. Do you hate me, David? I don't have that kind of time, I said. I have repairs to make. Marcus won't apologize. He will speak to the police, I said. The rest is between him and the truth. She pulled a folded photograph, Angela in the choir loft, laughing mid-song. Keep it, she said. I will, I told her, and the promise that goes with it. If you need help with repairs, real help, no strings, call me. I'll call workers who do their whole job, I said. You can help by answering the treasurer. She nodded and left the porch like a person leaving a hospital, slower than she came. Inside, Thomas pressed the photograph into a frame. Where? By the piano, I said, where she belongs. Afternoon settled into sawdust and gentle clatter. The contractor reset the porch swing anchor and promised to return Thursday with a brace for the eaves. The choir director stopped by with 2 teenagers carrying hymnals and muffins. The boys asked if they could test the piano. Only if you play what she wrote, I said. They did, imperfect and sincere. Notes stumbled, then found their feet. The house listened like a patient elder, loving effort more than Polish. A police cruiser rolled past. My phone buzzed. Interviews complete. Statements recorded. You'll be updated. Thomas read it and exhaled. Quiet justice, he said. Best kind, I replied. We hung the last photo at dusk. Angela under the lemon tree, holding a bowl of fruit like a communion plate. You kept the memory, Thomas said. You also kept the roof. Both were due, I said. People drifted off with waves and promises to return. The agent lingered. I filed a report with my broker, she said. I'll give the police my notes. Thank you, I said, and take this. I handed her a photocopy of the covenant. In case another motivated seller tries to skip the hard parts, she managed a small smile. I learned more here than in any class. When she left, the house and I were alone again. I walked room to room with the new key, locking each window. Not suspicion, stewardship. In the dining room, I sat beneath the quilt and opened my 2-paragraph statement one last time. I read it aloud. The house stands for family and faith, I said. It remains open to memory, closed to speculation, and available to the voices that grew in its rooms. It is not a product. It is a promise. The floor answered with a quiet creak. I carried a chair onto the porch and set it where the swing's shadow swayed. The lemon tree breathed its clean, stubborn scent. Ordinary sounds moved along the block. Bark, screen door, bicycle chain. Angela once told me that a promise is a bridge and a boundary at the same time. A bridge to bring people home. A boundary to stop them selling the riverbed. Footsteps approached on the sidewalk. Marcus. No suit. A gray hoodie, hands tucked, eyes tired. 5 minutes, he said. Then I'm gone. 4, I replied. He stared at the lemon tree, then at the windows. I chased a shortcut, he said. I told myself you were finished, that the church was a formality, that paperwork was clay. Clay makes bricks, I said. Bricks make walls. I won't fight the covenant. I'll answer questions. His voice thinned. I'll fix what I can. You'll try, I said. Some things fix slower than money and faster than pride. I don't expect forgiveness. Then don't use it as a bargaining chip, I said. Bring the receipts. Return the keys you copied. Tell the truth the way you told the lie. Out loud. Understood. He handed me a small envelope. Inside were 2 keys, crudely cut. I won't be back, he said. Not as a thief, I said. Come back when you can sit on the porch without measuring it. He nodded and went down the steps. At the sidewalk, he turned. She taught me that hymn, he said quietly. I just forgot the words. Learn them again, I said. They're not going anywhere. He left without drama, no threats. Just shoes on concrete and the quiet that followed. Night settled warm. I turned on the porch light, then turned it off again. The moon was enough. I slipped the copied keys into the envelope with the covenant and sealed it. A small archive of 2 stories, the one that strayed and the one that stayed. I stood, touched the door, and spoke to the house like it could hear me. They tried to flip you, I said. We flipped the script. The hinges held true. The lemon tree scraped a gentle amen. Her house stands.